Welcome everyone to Chart's free webinar series. Today we have our panelists of predicting trends for 2024, and I'm going to introduce Kelly McCutcheon to introduce the rest of the panelists. Welcome, Kelly.
Hey, thank you so much, and welcome everybody. You are here because you want to kickstart your 2024 with amazing intention, and that is just what we're going to serve up today. My name is Kelly McCutcheon. I am the Group Director of Training and Development for Whataburger. We're based in San Antonio. We have almost 1,000 restaurants. I'm super excited about that fact. And I also have the pleasure of serving on the Chart board as the person that oversees membership. And so I'm so excited to introduce our panel to you. But first, I want to share a little bit about Chart. So Chart is the place where hospitality training professionals gather to learn, connect, and grow. We are here to help develop trainers and advance training careers to the highest levels of performance through our guiding principles of learning, sharing, growing, and caring. In addition to webinars like this, one of the greatest things that I think we do is put on our twice annual conferences. And we just happen to have one coming up in Charlotte. And the theme is Prism of Possibilities. So mark your calendars, check that date, and we'd love to see you. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our panelists. And we wanted to kickstart things off by looking back at 2023 before we look ahead into 2024. So what we want to know, panelists, is who are you, and share a little bit about your brand. And we'd also love to know a little bit about your relationship with Chart. And what is something that helped make you successful in 2023? And viewers, participants, we'd love to hear from you as well. If you want to type in the chat, what is something that helped make you successful in 2023? But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kim. So Kim, introduce yourself. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. I'm Kim Evans. I'm the Director of Training for Hop Dottie Burger Bar. We are a fun and funky burger concept focused on quality and variety and uniqueness. We are nationwide, 48 restaurants strong and growing. I've been a Chart member since 2020. I've attended 5 conferences, one of them virtual, and I've been on 2 conference teams. Amazing experience. Early on, my biggest goal with Chart was to complete all 4 competency tracks, and I have since done that. So now my aim is to give back as much as possible. So hence, here I am. Honestly, the biggest thing that helped me in 2023 is the tool that I'm actually going to review with you today, the Weekly Flash. So when I was promoted to Director of Training, I found myself leading a team for the first time in almost a decade. And just making sure that everything was really organized and me and my team were spending our time really wisely was a pretty big challenge. So I phoned a Chart friend and they actually shared this tool with me. And you know what we always say, steal shamelessly. So excited to share with you a little later today. Kate, take it away.
Thanks, Kim. I'm Kate Stiteler, I'm Director of Training for Sonesta Hotels. Sonesta Hotels has been around since the 1930s. We're the 8th largest hotel company in the United States, with over 200 owned and managed hotels throughout the U.S. and about over 1,200 franchise hotels. So I've been with my company for 17 years, and I've been a member of Chart since 2020. Same. I've also, like Kim, I've been a conference director twice, and I've presented at a breakout session at our most recent conference, and I'm super excited to be here. And I think that my team would agree with me that a big thing that made our lives easier and certainly a lot different in 2023 was the advent of AI and introducing a lot more AI into our day-to-day world. And whether that is using ChatGPT as an assist for creating scripts, or using something like Canva to translate something into a different language instantaneously. It's really changed and improved, I think, the way that we get to do things. So, and Rachel, excuse me, you're up.
Hey, everybody. So my name is Richal. I am the Vice President of Training for Buffalo Wild Wings, which is part of Inspire Brands. We run almost 1,300 sports bars, along with our new growth concept, Buffalo Wild Wings Go, which is a QSR concept. And we're up to about 65 locations that we started opening the past couple of years. My involvement with Chart is a little bit longer than these two. So I think my first conference was in 2013. I have no idea how many conferences I've been to since then. But I am the immediate past president of Chart, which was an awesome experience for me, but then also we'll call it a career path through Chart, where I also was part of conference teams. I was the conference director. I've taught competencies, been a master presenter, taught breakouts, and then served 5 years on the Chart board of directors. So a little envious of Kelly. I have a little bit of FOMO this year with it being my first year off the board, because it's an experience that I value dearly in my. So super excited to be here today. I'm going to actually kick us off with our first topic. So let me go ahead and share my screen. But really honored to be here with Kate and Kim. And I love the way that Kelly has structured this webinar, because as we think about 2024, there's so many different ways that you can plan. And so we have the ability to show you ways to plan it weekly, quarterly, and yearly. And I'm starting big, and we're going to get a little bit smaller as we go through today's webinar. And as you think yearly planning, you all are probably like living in it. I'm physically sitting in Florida right now with my direct reports doing our 2024 planning. A couple of weeks ago, I was doing it with our operations leadership team and aligning with our marketing team. So that is just like what we're all probably living. And I know I jumped into my presentation and skipped what made me successful for 23, a little bit done intentionally, because one of the things that made me really successful for 2023 as we was how we went about planning our yearly goals. And a lot of times people do it in silos. So the marketing team might have a plan, the ops team might have a plan, and then teams that fall under that make their own plan. Something that made us super successful for 23 is that we, the two biggest teams, marketing operations, did our yearly planning in alignment. So as we thought about things like we are going to launch new burgers, we talked about how, from a training standpoint, are we going to validate our team members on how to execute burgers and gamify it and make it fun. So that alignment was really, really important. So getting into yearly planning, you all might think I might be jumping into strat plan, an ops plan, a marketing plan, how you do objectives and key results. I am not doing any of that today. That can be a different webinar. I'm actually going to talk about the human side of planning, but also excited about the some of the tools that Kate and Kim are going to show you about the strategic side of it. So really, this is about a word of the year. How do you set intention? How do you motivate your people? And this is something that I definitely did not invent, word of the year. This is something that I have seen all over social media. It's a social media fad. You guys probably see the hashtags as we go from 23 to 24 and in past years. The Oxford Dictionary actually just put out their 2023 word of the year, and it was Riz. And I have never heard that word before, so I felt old. But it is a Gen Z slang term, and it leans on charisma. But what I loved about this post that I happened to see 3 days ago on the New York Times Instagram is they talked about that their selection of the word is meant to reflect the ethos, mood, or preoccupations of the preceding year, while also having potential to term of lasting in cultural significance. So they are doing their word a year of looking back, but then also something that sticks. And I think for us, using that concept of word of the year can be the same thing. So how do we look at what our wins, our opportunities, our challenges, to develop a word of the year that helps us in our everyday career, but then also something sticks that can be lasting. So in 2021, this is where I kind of started this with my team, decided to make this more of a social media fad, of a hashtag, and make it come to life. And it was really about intention. So you know, when you think about the word intention, you think about something that gives purpose or creating a mindset. And that's what this was about. It was rallying around a word for the team. And really, this wasn't like, oh, let me set out to do this plan of word of the year. This started with a casual conversation. I was sitting across the table from the president of the company, who's my boss. And he was telling me about some of the things the team is going to go through this year, and basically said, your word of the year is nimble, Rachel. And I could have passed that off as like a casual just conversation. Okay, I need to be nimble, but I actually was like, all right, I need to use this. I need to run with it because I need to have this conversation with my team to start creating that mindset and really starting to set expectations with the team. This picture that you see on here is from Friday Night Lights. It's one of my favorite shows. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's fantastic. But on their wall, they say, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. And every time they go out to the football game, they tap it and they scream it. And it's something they rally around. But it's basically, and I know this isn't a word, it's a phrase, but the same mentality. It's basically saying, like, we can't lose as long as we have the clear eyes, the full hearts. So this word of the year can set those expectations of how you can win together as a team. It can help you set goals. It can help you set clarity and focus. For us, with our first word of the year, it was really about setting the expectations. So it was a year that, and every year is like this for us, but it was a year of a lot of change. It was a year of a lot of testing, a lot of launching, setting some expectations where we knew we weren't going to be on a regular calendar cadence that we've actually worked really hard to stand up the prior years. So it was just knowing what was happening in the business and how we were going to have to react. So it helped us, because our word was nimble, anticipate that and have that mindset of, okay, no matter what happens, we decided we are going to do this. We've decided we're going to be nimble, and we anticipate the fact that we are going to have to be that way. So as much as we want to stay in our calendar, we have to anticipate that we need to react and have behaviors that are flexible and agile. It also helped us set priorities using that mindset. Really became a rally cry for us. So, you know, positivity is contagious. And so really, like, we would yell that word. There was a sign in our area that had that word. I'll show that to you in a couple minutes. But it actually was something that ended up spreading across our floor, which is the Buffalo Wild Wings brand in our building. And so people would see the sign, they would ask us what it's about. They would yell the word nimble with us. They would work it into sentences to make us laugh also. But it's something that spread across the brands and really created a shared mindset, not only on our team, but with other teams as well. It also became kind of a go-to when times are tough. So think about, I think a lot of you have done the exercise of, like, say the word hey in different tones. And it's like, hey, hey, hey. And the different meaning that it could be. Now, we all knew what it meant when we said we have to be nimble this year, but we also used it in, again, like, giving clarity and direction of, like, what maybe the next project needs to be like. We used it to encourage each other because we already knew we needed to have that mindset. We even had some fun and used it very sarcastically. So if we were not having a good day and something just got really thrown on our plate, we just went nimble. And it allowed us to align on that, though, and work together through it. So just really helps with some high pressure situations of having a little bit of fun, again, with that joint mindset and creating that unity of team. Helps reflect on performance. So, you know, we are all used to performance reviews, whether we execute them on our team or have them delivered on us as a team member. And really the easy part of performance reviews is, you know, did you achieve this goal, this tangible task? Yes or no? How did you do it? Was it within budget? Was it within timeline? How did it roll out? The hard part is reflecting on a full year of behaviors, performance, obstacles about that individual. And I'm sure many of you, like my company, have performance reviews in a template, and there's behaviors that are your brand behaviors that everybody gets evaluated on. But a word of the year, it lets you have that unique behavior that is about your team. It gives you another lens, because you were talking about it all year, to have a good conversation with your team member about, did they align on that joint mindset that your team set out to be part of. And then really, this is about creating a mindset that sticks. So I mentioned the sign earlier. made this slide. We put it on our president's door. He actually still has it on his door 4 years late or 3 years later, which is awesome. I will tell you guys, and I'm not sure if I should admit this part, we've had the same word for many years. Last week, I'm leaving his office. I noticed this was still on his door, and I said, can you at least give me a synonym? And I got a big fat no, because it is still where we are as a company. It's still where we are as a team, and it's actually working for our team and creating that mindset that sticks. So don't be afraid to use it year over year. But we were able to prove that it's within our DNA. And then it also helped us build a reputation across our brand that we are the team that is that way. We are the team that is nimble. We are the team that is agile. But I will also share just like the mindset of the word of the year conceptually can also stick. So I'm with my team this week. We just did DISC this morning. And as we were aligning on things as a team, some of the words that came out, we were like, maybe that can be a secondary word of the year for us. So more things that we can just align on in terms of a mindset, which was just a really cool thing that one of my team members brought that up. So, couple other examples I wanted to share with you, more than just the word, just 2 other ways that we as a brand use words to goal set, and do it in like a simple way that taps into that person and not such a, let's set a strategy, let's do a 5-year plan. All that stuff is important, and I'm a believer of it, but also there's the piece of let's get buy-in of our teams. So we as a brand, we are a wing driven sports bar. So we believe in sauce is like one of our foundational products. So every team member has a sauce bottle, and they go through a whole program. And at the end of it, they create their sauce title, they create their unique ingredients, and they set personal and professional goals. And it's a really fun exercise. They hang on the wall in the heart of house of all of our sports bars. It's a great conversation driver. But in tapping into the word of the year, we actually have our team members go through this exercise yearly. So they are resetting career goals, they are resetting personal goals, whether it's tied to Buffalo Wild Wings or not. We want to show that while you're with us, we are supporting you from a career standpoint and a personal standpoint. But I think that my unique strengths is a fun part of them deciding like what their words of the year are, of their strengths and how they contribute to the team. Another little icebreaker, and I was editing slides up until this morning because I kept thinking of ideas. I actually did this icebreaker with my team yesterday as we kicked off our 2024 planning meeting. And I said, send the group chat 2 emojis. One emoji that describes how you felt about 2023, and one that describes what you look forward to in 2024. And it just drove a really fun conversation, again, using images instead of words, just to sum up our year individually as a team. And I will tell you that it actually drove a lot of conversation around aligning on how we have to continue to be nimble and adaptable as a team. So, but it was just a fun way to kick it off, and I encourage you to use it. So, with that, just what will your word of the year be for 2024? Not only do I encourage you to use it with your teams, I do encourage you to use it personally. So I have also done some reflection on how my 23 went, how my 24 will go. My personal word is going to be balance, which I can probably share that with a lot of people. I'm already seeing smiles with my other co-presenters, but I just grew my family. And so balance is going to be a very, very important thing for me this year. So I will keep that in mind. I will keep that as a conversation in my family life and my professional life. And it will help me create a mindset that sticks. So thank you all for joining us, and excited to hear the rest of the presentations.
Awesome, Rachel. Thank you for kickstarting with such an innovative idea. Now, I want to put a hashtag next to like every single word I say. So I don't know about y'all out there, but I am just jazzed to set off my year with intention, both personally and professionally. And as we keep going through the webinar, I do want to challenge you. If you have access to your emoji keyboard, let's do that exercise. So feel free to put in an emoji that reflects how you feel about 2023 and what you're looking forward to in 2024. Rachel, remind me offline about what the bicycle means. I'm thinking that's yours. So Without further ado, I have the opportunity to turn it over to Kate, and we're going to dial in a little bit more and start taking a look at our quarters, weeks, and even days. So take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Rachel. How would I write a nice way to think about the year holistically? And I was trying to think of what would my, word of the year be? And I think I have to choose two words, and I want those words to be big picture, right? So I was just actually working on my self-assessment for my performance review. And I kept thinking, I need to think about the things that really matter, and what a better way to do it than to use some of the tools that my team employs to sort of be a little bit better with big picture and strategy. And so I want to talk to everybody today about big rocks. And so big rocks is the way that we prioritize how to be the most productive and how to achieve the right and the best results on our team, and to sort of help bring others to those places as well. So big rocks is a concept that we've been using, and we use these, we kind of talk in terms of two things: big rocks and gravel. All right. And so when you think about the things that come across your desk every day or every week, or the people who aren't on your team but reach out to you, my guess is there's a lot of stuff coming at you all at once. All right. We are being asked to do a lot more than we've ever been asked to do at work before. I always use an example when I talk about big rocks with my team, and with people in my organization, that, if you think about back in the day to, assembly lines, you didn't have as many tasks that you had to kind of do. You might have been responsible for one or two things. And I always laugh because in the 70s, my dad worked for the Volkswagen plant in our town, and he was a radio guy, and his job was to put one part inside a radio as it came down the thing. And his biggest, kind of decision he had to make was, what time do I clock out for lunch? And, what am I going to listen to on my kind of headphones? And so today we don't have that. Today there's a ton of things coming our way, and it's really easy to sort of spin your wheels and get buried in all of this gravel that ultimately isn't that important. And so you have to come up with a system for figuring out how to shift your mindset from, it's not about getting everything done, because everything that comes across your desk or comes towards you is not actually going to probably always be that important. And it might be a waste of time for you, and it certainly might stop you from hitting your results. So kind of making a mindset shift from, I need to get every single thing done. I need to respond to every email. I need to go to every meeting. I need to, do every single request that comes to me, to, hey, I actually need to get the right things done, because the right things are going to be, again, those things that help me achieve the results that are the thing for the things that really matter, the high value work. And so it's an easy thing to say. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. I actually have two examples written down for just a few minutes from now about things that came in within 30 minutes before this webinar, where if I had just immediately said, oh, that request is in, let me react to it, and done it, I wouldn't have spent time doing other high value work. And so it's easy to say, let's not do it all. It's a lot harder to do, right? And so my team employs the time matrix. All right. And the time matrix is a really simple model. If you're not using it, either individually or with your teams, you really should, because it allows us to figure out how important something is and when it needs to be done. Now, the time matrix is not new, and we did not make it at Sonesta. I'm certain there's a lot of people on here going, hey, Kate, I know the time matrix exists. Well, knowing and doing are two different things, right? And so being able to actually take a time out, make your to-do list for the week, take a time out, circle the things that are matter, prioritize the big things, and push the other things to the side is really critical. So just a review for those of you who might not be as familiar with the time matrix. All right. The time matrix is measured in terms of how important something is and when it needs to be done. Does it need to be done now? Can it wait? And so when you look at the time matrix and you think about the four quadrants of it, the ones at the top, Q1 and Q2, are the things that are most important, but differentiate, they have to be done. These are what we call big rocks. If it's up here on the top, it's a big rock. And so it is so important that we cannot not do it. Now, the only difference between a Q1 and a Q2 is when it has to be done.
So things that are in Q1, we can call this the quadrant of necessity or crisis because it's super important and it has to be done right now. All right. And we'll look at some examples of what these are. Same thing up here on the top, Q2. This is still extremely important, but you can see that it's not as urgent. We can be planful. We can be mindful about when we're doing these things. We call this the quadrant of productivity or long-term goals. Some people call it the quadrant of coaching. Some people call it the quadrant of development. You could even call it the quadrant of big rocks, right? So these things at the top are the big rocks that you need to do. They're important. The things that fall down here at the bottom of the time matrix, these are things that for whatever reason are not as important to you and the things that really matter, AKA the things that are going to help you hit your results. We call these the quadrant of distraction or waste. Distraction is where things aren't really important, but they feel like they have to be done now, right? And then same thing over here, this quadrant at the bottom, this is all gravel down here, by the way. These are your non-important things. It's not important over here. It doesn't need to get done ever. So I put some examples on the next slide about a couple of these things, right? So here's a different way to look at it. So again, big rocks are the things that help us, the things that we need to do, the things that will ultimately help further our goals. Gravel is the stuff on the bottom that doesn't. And so when I think about big rocks and I think about Q1 and that quadrant of necessity or crisis, these are things like fires, floods, OSHA showing up and saying that they need to do a walkthrough, things like maybe the CEO of the company calls and says, hey, our stakeholders need a report from you immediately, that kind of thing, right? So these are things that, hey, no matter what, you got to drop it. You got to drop what you're doing and get these things done because they're just that important. Over in Q2, all right, which is again, still up here at the top, but doesn't need to be done right away. These are things like goal setting, performance reviews, all right, coaching, training people. I mentioned that I was working on my self-assessment. My boss and I will meet sometime in February. He will give me my review then. But we're working on them right now because we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves enough time for me to think through what I want to put down for my self-assessment, my boss to read it. These are, again, things that we plan out and we put on our calendar because they're such big rocks. We put them out and we give ourselves time to do them. We're not going to back ourselves into a corner and wait till the last minute. When you look at the things on the bottom, this is the gravel that really threatens to bury you, okay? These are the things that aren't important and aren't going to kind of drive your goals forward. So you don't want to spend a lot of time here, right? I think about Q3, the quadrant of distraction, as oftentimes, other people's emergencies. Kate, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, so now you need to stop what you're doing and help me, right? That can be a thing. Being invited to a meeting that you don't have any place being at, just because, hey, your title sounds like it's supposed to be there, or and saying that 3 of your 4 people on your team have been invited to the same meeting and you all just show up instead of having a conversation ahead of time to say who's going to be there while we work on other stuff, right? Again, as I mentioned, I had 30 minutes before this webinar started. My team oversees engagement at my company as well. And I had sent all of our engagement scores. I had done all this wonderful work. Everybody had something. And one of them reached out and said, we always do it by location. And he reached out and he said, hey, do you have this by brand? And I said, and now I do have it by brand. We've never used it by brand and it's not calculated into any of our bonus. So I'm not quite sure why he wanted it. And my initial reaction was, oh, I need to help this guy do this thing. And then I said, no, you don't. It doesn't actually align with anything in Q1 and Q2. So I had to kind of push back and find out a little bit more information. And it turns out he thought that was a nice to have, not a need to have. And I don't need to waste my time on nice to haves, not need to haves, right? And so again, the time matrix allows us to sort of frame up how important something is and then making sure we're focusing on that thing. So that takes me to what my team does on a quarterly basis. Now, people talk a lot about their goals. We're going to set annual goals. We're going to set quarterly goals. And I have certainly been on teams before where I had to write my annual goals every year and then we never talked about them again. That's not what my team does. All right. So my team talks about big rocks and goals on a quarterly basis. All right. So we have we're a Microsoft Teams shop over at Sonesta. And so we have a Microsoft team. I got a little image here where every single quarter we have to go in and input. These blank spaces are my team members. I just won't put their names on blast, but everybody goes in and they fill out a form that looks just like this, where what we do is we write down those quarterly goals, AKA those big rocks, the things we have to do during that quarter. And we give ourselves dates, and we talk about what anything we might need, and we talk about any follow-up. You can even see, you can even see that we bold some of the things that are even the biggest of the big rocks. Everything needs to be done this quarter, but these are some things that we bold that says this is a boulder. It's not even the biggest rock. So we talk about these in terms of our quarterly goals. I even keep my quarterly goal sheet printed out and near me at all times, even so I don't have to go into this, but this provides a roadmap. And then the last thing that we do is, or the last thing that I will talk about today, because again, listen, this is my quarterly kind of plan for the big rocks that need to be done. Those emails I don't need, those requests for scores that are not important, those meetings I'm invited to that I find out midway through I didn't need to be to, those are all still going to happen. However, having a plan allows me to not let those big rocks in the quarter slide off out of my attention and my focus. And so then we actually take this down, and this is segueing into, Kim is going to be talking to you a little bit about what this looks like on a week-by-week basis, but we use those quarterly kind of big rocks that we had created in those quarterly goals, and we use those in two ways. My team, every other week, we have a one-on-one with our boss, an individual one-on-one on a bi-weekly basis, and so we use a one-on-one meeting form that looks just like this. You can see it just says big rocks at the very top, and my boss says to me, okay, hey, listen, let's talk about a couple things. So let's talk about any new communication we need to know, anything you heard during the week you want to share. What are the big rocks that you are going to be working on next week, and what do you need help with? All right. And then, of course, we add in anything else we want to talk about, and we even allow for constructive and positive feedback to be shared upwards, which is really great. So again, if you're not using, number one, if you're not having one-on-one meetings where you are intentionally talking, not just about what I have been doing, what I want to do, but what I will be committing to doing next week, then start having those. And I'm happy to share this template if anybody wants it. It's very simple. And again, talking in terms of not just what's on my plate, but what's the big rock priority, right? And I know because it's one of those quadrants that needs to be done. And then every single week, my team meets together, and we have a meeting where we come together on Mondays and we talk about our big rocks for the week. So there's a section of our meeting form that has big rocks for the week, and it'll have what we're working on this week. Again, we might have talked about it with our boss, but this is sharing it with every single person so that every single person on our team is aware of what we're doing. And then as you can see, so that's at the top of our page. And then as you can see, the first thing my boss does is he says, hey team, what did you work on? How did I know what you worked on because we still have the form. How did your big rocks go last week, right? How did you get them done? How did you do on them? Do we need to reframe those? And so, the nice thing about doing something like this on a quarterly basis is that it really allows us to be mindful and planful and make sure that we're all aligned about what's really, really important. What's important to me may not have the same importance for somebody else on my team, and it may not for my boss who liaisons with the rest of the senior leaders. He may come back to us and say, I look back at our quarterly form, and guess what? A priority has changed. So let's not, that big rock that was a Q1 or a Q2 is now not important anymore, or not as important. So let's shift that down and replace it with another high value work, so that we are trying and working diligently to spend our time on the things that really, really matter. But you can't spend your time on the things that really, really matter unless you have prioritized and agreed with your team or your boss about what those big rocks really are, and then followed up on how you did with them. So that is what we do on a quarterly and into a weekly basis with prioritizing our productivity and prioritizing what's important. So I will go ahead and stop sharing. Maybe.
It's all good. Thank you so much, Kate. That was awesome. And as a fellow rock setter, I can chime in that if you're wanting to know where do I go to start all of this, there is a great book, a really simple book that's called What the Heck is EOS? And there's a chapter called Big Rocks. And I refer to that at the beginning of every year as we start our quarterly cadence. So just throwing that in. And without further ado, we're going to dial this in a little bit more. How do you win the week? Let's hear from Kim Evans.
Thank you. I'm looking to share my screen here, but it looks like I'm waiting for this one to stop.
I would love to stop. Oh, there it is. I kept
You
hitting
nailed
stop.
it.
Oh, you're up, Kim.
Thanks. Well, as Kelly said, it is time to get just a little bit more granular. So we're going to be talking about the weekly flash, and this tool really helps you kind of keep your eyes on the prize while simultaneously digging deeper into the details that help you move those projects along week by week, right? So let's take a look. There's a lot to take in here. This is actual footage of one of my weeks earlier this year, typos and all. And what this entails, the weekly flash, it is a report that includes active objectives and projects, your schedule for last week, this week, and next week, big 3 accomplishments from last week, big 3 objectives for this week, big 3 objectives for next week, and a big lesson from last week from the previous week. So it's really a one-stop shop that helps you prioritize and stay focused on your most important things. So you can see this is a really nice segue from the rocks. So what does all this mean? I'm so glad you asked. We're going to take this step by step. So looking at the active objectives and projects, keep your rocks top of mind, right? If you're working with rocks like Kate and her team, these are the things that are going to go at the very top, your biggest projects, your biggest goals, and it helps you keep them top of mind. That way, as those to-do lists continue to get crazy, as we know they do, it just makes sure that these are your main focus and you're able to plug away on these week by week. Next, we have the schedule. So it's for last week, this week, and next week. Think, where have you been? Where are you going? So this is really helpful, especially for people who travel, or if you have, big things like big meetings or conferences or anything like that. It helps you look at your week at a glance so that you know how to prioritize your big to-do list items around that. So you can see in here, this particular week, I had a 3-day operations meeting and I did some travel to our Woodlands locations, right? So this really helps you prioritize because you're not going to have a lot of really lofty weekly goals on a week where, say, you're at a chart conference. So it really helps you keep all of those things in perspective. So for last week's 3 accomplishments, a hot tip here is you want to make sure that your wins are not things that are just regular to-do list items that you have to do on a reoccurring basis, right? Those are the things that it's just regular upkeep. You kind of have to do those anyway. I will say I'm a really big fan of take what you need and leave what you don't. So ideally, these are going to be focused on the things that you have been doing to keep up with those bigger goals. But sometimes those wins might surprise you, right? So in slot 3 here, for example, I have, I need to get the DISC online course going for our people team. So that's not a big focus of mine, but in this moment, we had a new person on our people team. So it did kind of climb to the top of the priority list to make sure that that person was a part of a DISC workshop, right? So while that to-do list might pile up, you have some wiggle room here to add in some of those things that do kind of fall into that more important or more urgent category. Something else I wanted to mention with sometimes the wins catch you by surprise. It might not always be that you did the things you set out to do. Sometimes it's having that breakthrough conversation with somebody that maybe you were having some interpersonal conflict with previously, or sometimes it's a really impactful restaurant or hotel visit, or just a really awesome training session. And maybe that wasn't the most important thing on your to-do list, but it's just that thing that you felt the most proud about. And again, I think the beauty of this tool in terms of take what you need and leave what you don't is it's editable. So feel free to add more lines in if you need to celebrate those good times. Come on. So next we have this week's objectives. So ideally, again, these are going to be those milestones or those weekly goals that are going to be helping you work towards those bigger goals, right? And again, you can see I have a line item in here about facilitating a disc workshop. So still working towards those things, but you know, I have a lot of things in here about rolling out Opus. So that was one of the bigger rocks, one of the bigger focuses. So every week I'm going to have something in there about really driving that rollout. For next week's objectives, we get to look a little bit further into the future, right? So it's all about how do we stay on track with these projects? And again, this is editable at any time. So if you get to the end of this week and you're planning for the next week and some of this needs to shift around a little bit, that's okay, because this is yours. This is how you get to prioritize. Next, of course, without reflection, there is no learning. So we have a section for your biggest lesson from last week. You can see my example here was be more intentional with prioritizing your most important tasks. Very apropos. And sometimes for me, this is the lesson that keeps on lessening, right? So like Rachel was mentioning with, wow, we've had the same word of the year a couple years in a row. Sometimes your lessons are repeat lessons, and that's okay too. So of course, you're still going to have to refer to that ever-growing to-do list that we all have, but it is important to remember this tool is going to help you keep on track with those big goals that you have, no matter what surprises come your way. So one tip I wanted to share is me and my team, we always filled this out on Friday. That way you're planning for the week ahead, and Monday you can just hit the ground running. So this was actually shared to me in an Excel sheet, and my organization uses smart sheets. So I added that into a one-stop shop smart sheet for me and my team with a template that we just copy and paste each week and update the date. That way we have that running list. And it's so awesome to have all of this at a glance, because not only are you organizing yourself, you are contributing to those really great habits with your team as well, but it helps you follow up with your team, right? Like, what are some of their big lessons that you can talk through? How can you help them follow up on some of their big objectives? Or how can you recognize them for some of their biggest wins? It's also really nice to be able to peek at their schedules so that you don't call them on a day off. So awesome one-stop shop, and I am going to be excited to share this tool with you all as well. We'll be sending that out after the fact in an Excel format so that y'all can steal shamelessly. So that's how you win your week in a flash.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kim. And it's something that comes to mind with all of these, whether we're setting intention for our year, for our quarter, or for our week. You know, we hear more and more the need for trainers to have a seat at the table when it comes to strategy. Each of these tools is a way for you to strategize. Strategy is simply a plan, a pause in time where you stop to set intention, whether it's for your year, your quarter, or your week. Before we let you go, we did have one question in the chat, and this one is for Rachel, so I want to make sure we address it. Lily asks, does the word of the year extend to the team in the restaurants as well, or is this more of a corporate focus? If extended to the restaurants, how did you announce it?
Great question. So this was really like a very casual thing. Like, this is just conversations with my team. So it's not even like it's not like an official communication that went out across the support center. It's not anything that's like formally in the review. It's more just part of my conversations as a manager. So really it's a very casual. However, I would say I love a good theme. I know Kelly shares my love in that. We've done chart breakouts around that in the past. We've conceptually used this, not calling it word of the year, but like a rally cry with our general managers. So when we did our GM conferences earlier in the year, we had our theme and it was all in this past year. And we wove that through content, but then all of our follow-up communications, some of the programs we stood up that were GM focused, it was all about being all in. So again, it wasn't this like tactical thing. It was about creating a mindset that collectively our GMs across the organization need to be all in. And we're standing up a new one for 24 as we start to kick off planning for our GM conferences as well. So the same concept still applies.
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you. And speaking of a good theme and yearly themes, Pantone is about to announce the color of the year for 2024. So 17 hours and counting. They do have a countdown on their calendar. So much like the Merriam-Webster word of the year, you could throw the right color in there too. Before we let our panelists go, of course, I'm going to ask them to gaze into their crystal balls and give one prediction for 2024 as it relates to training. So we've taken a look back at what's made us successful. We're setting our year with intention. Where do you see us going? Kate, I'm going to turn it over to you first.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. So as I mentioned before, I've been with my company for a really long time, almost 20 years. And in that time, I've been so fortunate to be filmed a billion times for work, right? And so my team likes to laugh at my weight gains over the years, my weight losses, my hair changes. I don't find it as amusing. What's really nice in 2024 is that we are going to be able to inexpensively use avatars to create training, right? And so I joke that I don't want to be filmed anymore, but when you think about the very real possibility of, you filming one of your senior leaders, one of your VPs, maybe even your president, and they're giving a welcome message to new hires, and then they leave. Now you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars again to refilm, or if something changes, you can't just, delete their words and re-have them, it won't work like that. So I think that using avatars to replace that sort of, maybe not replace, but enhance that live training will make things much less expensive. And to borrow B-Dub's word of the year, you'll be able to be more nimble because you'll be able to change things a lot more often. If the marketing team says, we don't want that background to be purple, we want it to be blue, no worries, girl, I got that. We want to change this word. Great, I'll retype it in and my avatar will say it. I think we're going to see more use of avatars to cheapen and not make to make less expensive training and make it more effective and make it quicker. That's my thought. I was going to say, Kim, you go next.
Yeah, gosh, this could just be me, but my prediction is we're going to see companies leaning a lot deeper into the development of interpersonal and leadership skills. Not only is this obviously a great benefit to trainees because they're skills that they can take anywhere, but also we have to prepare our future leaders. Gen Z is going to be 25% of the workforce by 2025. They're coming. Let's get them ready for their next steps. Rachel, what about you?
Yeah, and I would say, so I think that training is going to continue to be brought into conversations earlier and earlier from a strategic standpoint. So our companies tend to spend a lot of money on consumer data and building programs around who our target consumer is. And there's just so much data around that, but also thinking through if we're spending all this time, all this investment in standing up a program, how does that come to life through our team members? So bringing in training, bringing in HR professionals to really think through from a strategic team member standpoint, who is our team member and what is their psyche and what do they need to be able to be successful in launching your programs and executing your brand standards.
So AI avatars, training and interpersonal development, or bringing training into strategic conversations. If any of those are the future that's laid out for us, I know trainers will be right there at the start of that line. So thank you all panelists, thank you attendees, and thank you for those of you watching this webinar and future dates. Really appreciate you joining us to learn, share, grow, and care. Until next time, thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.